ladies and gentlemen. We are going to rock your world. Actually, it's sort of. I mean, I rocked a few people's world earlier today with the same stuff. I didn't realize it was going to fit, but this works in identify. Like I was doing my IBC, igniting the buying conversation, and that's where I'm using mind models in creating a buying conversation. Anyway, are we live yet? Are we on?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, cool. Okay, so tonight we're going to cover on the Blair Dunkley experience. We're going to cover people don't change unless they perceive a need to change. And I'm stressing the word perceive because that's the big trick. So many people, I mean, that's also where I was thinking about you, John, from last week. You knew what you needed to do. You actually tried to change. You had a need to change, but you didn't know what specifically to change. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think you also stated last week that you'd been trying to fix your mindset for like going on 40 years. And yeah.
I've been trying to fix it for
Sorry, Connie's trying to fix your mindset for like 40 years. I'll probably modify that slightly to him.
Yeah, I had been trying to get past bridge the gap between recognition that, that, okay, this isn't working for me, I need to change, and what to do to actually affect a lasting change.
Right.
That's the way I remember talking about it.
Okay, so cool. Unfortunately, I don't have my iPhone with me, so I can't record that, but it's recorded in here, so I'll have to go back to this. And this is, how many minutes in are we? 8 minutes after 7. So,
or you can review last week.
The recording will only be a couple minutes because it's on Facebook. The
okay.
recording didn't start until Facebook, which was a few minutes ago.
Okay, cool. Anyway, my point being here is I was taking a look at perception, and I also realized that by learning mind models, you were able to literally change things and stop, number one, beating yourself up by acquiring mind models. And number two, look at mind models as something that you can do and test and actually put into your life and see if they actually work or not, as opposed to trying to shift the belief to fix your mind, sort of like inferring that your brain is broken somehow and you can't get it right. And that's what mind models exactly take away, because they go, here's a model. Here's a mind model. You do the model, you get this result. I don't care if you believe in it or not. It doesn't matter whether or not you like it or dislike it. You basically do the thing, and it generally gets an identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable result for you. You get similar results each time. Not exactly the same, because life isn't perfect, but the model works at least 80+% of the time. And that is the game changer here. For those of you that are relatively new or to this whole thing, mind models are different, way, way different than mindset. And today, we're actually going to take a look at driving the we're not going to look at all 5. We're going to look at one of the 5 key drivers of human behavior and human nature. And the first one on the list that I personally have curated, because I found that when I'm engaging with people, if I keep these points in the back of my mind, I don't need to know them really upfront and conscious, but I need to have them in the back of my mind so I can start recognizing things when they present, and these points, these drivers of human nature and human behavior sort of percolate up. At least that's how it works for me. And when you know that people don't need to change unless they perceive a need to change, and they need to perceive the need to change. They might even know that they need to change, but they don't perceive a need, which is a rather interesting thing. I found is like in sales. And I was working with a group of people who are practicing the igniting the buying conversation. And a lot of these people are using old tell and sell methods of selling. You know, you tell people everything about it and you try and solve their problem for them, as opposed to have them discover what it is that their problem is and whether or not you have a way of guiding people through to engage with a solution or not. And if you have the solution, they buy. And if you don't have a solution, they go on, but they've moved incrementally closer to determining whether or not their problem is their problem, number one. And number two, if it is their own problem, they've redefined what they need to look for a solution. So I may not have their solution per se, but they know where to go to find out, or they've got a clearer picture. In other words, they start working on gaining clarity on their scenario, and as opposed to just saying, I need to get my life fixed and try and look for somebody to fix their life. At least that's one of the things that tends to happen. So question, you guys. People don't change unless they perceive a need to change. What mind models do you think are at play, or what missing mind models might also be at play with that whole, people don't change unless they perceive a need to change? So what are those mind models? And you guys all on the panelists have been around the block here a few times. And Trevor,
you want to let somebody else go first, or should I
I'll give somebody else a shot if somebody else wants to go on perceptions. So there's some basic ones here. There's a good 3 mind models that you can utilize, and you could dive into the weeds on it and get 4 or 5, but there's 3 obvious ones.
Connie's saying evaluation versus judgment.
Absolutely. How come, Connie?
Well, because the need, when you perceive there is a need, you have to evaluate that. And most of the time we judge it. So we don't change it because we're worried about the judgment part.
Exactly. And Sherry, you've nailed another one, naming and labeling.
Right.
Because naming and labeling it is absolutely critical. So well done, Sherry. You should be on the frickin' panel. Dwayne, what was that?
Safety versus comfort.
Safety versus comfort, absolutely. The big 3 right there. Those are the big 3 that I was saying. I've done something right along the way here, something that's effective at least. So this is cool. Trevor, do you have any others that you want to throw in there?
Did anybody say clarity versus certainty yet?
Nope, but
I was about to.
And then I was also going to add effective versus ineffective language.
Perfect. That's the 5 that I was saying that you could actually do right there. Damn, this stuff's working. I'm sorry. I am tickled. I am freaking tickled. I mean, I know I've taught these, but you guys are sticking. This is great work. Awesome work, guys. Awesome work. You guys are naming and labeling it. You're identifying where it does. Now, I want you guys, everybody but Sherry. Sherry's not on as panelist, but I wanted you to give me your argument for naming and labeling, clarity versus certainty, evaluation versus judgment, effective versus ineffective. Dwayne, clarity versus certainty. Was that yours?
I said that.
Oh,
unless he said it too.
Comfort. Okay. So start throwing stuff out. Start giving me your arguments for your different things. How come?
I'll go first for clarity. I saw clarity versus certainty fitting for that one, because if someone doesn't perceive the need to change, and there is a need to change, obviously they don't have clarity.
And what are they living in?
I suppose you could argue that they're living in a state of certainty that everything's fine.
Correct. And that certainty is frequently a state of denial, because they're not looking at their life And maybe it hasn't become painful enough yet, but the odds are it's going to become painful for them, because if they're here and life keeps on going, they get left behind further and further and further and further as life keeps on going. And they get pulled away and they get left behind. And that happens with clarity and certainty, where you're certain you're right. Well, as my dad used to say, you know what? Crossing the street in front of a bus, even though you're in a crosswalk, if it's moving at 30 miles an hour, you're dead right, Blair. You're dead, but you're right. And I went, okay, fine. I got it. Like the dead right part. I mean, what do you want? Like holding on to that stuff just really does not make sense, because you have to get clear on what's around you, what's surrounding you, what's effective, what's ineffective. And I'll stop right there because I'll give away effective versus ineffective. Okay. So who did effective versus ineffective?
That was the other one.
Okay. So jump on that one.
Argument, I guess, is similar. If someone's in a stuck state like that, to me, then they're not using effective language. So they're not going through the processes and using effective language that could influence them to get unstuck. So that fit.
Absolutely. So Connie, you came up with evaluation versus judgment. Okay, so pair that one in because it's a natural fit right here.
It
in
is.
A big way.
Like I said earlier, when you're in the judgment state, it's like you're in the first one that Trevor said, and I can't remember that one.
Effective versus
ineffective.
Clarity versus certainty.
Clarity versus certainty. You're in that judgment clarity. That you're right and everybody else is wrong.
Right. Yeah, you're in certainty that you're right and everybody else is wrong. Because what does clarity do that certainty does not do? And what does certainty do that clarity does not do? Either way works.
Wow. I haven't thought about it like that.
Well, do you guys recall anybody on the who's an attendee want to jump in there and throw in a comment in there? I'll just wait and tap dance a little bit, and if not, that's fine. So if you guys are thinking, pardon me,
certainty is to some extent being stuck in the past, whereas clarity is more of a questioning, getting in the present and asking questions.
Very good. Clarity is definitely a questioning process, and questioning processes by nature have to be where? Past, present, or future? Present. Now, you can ask a past question, but the answer is pulled, hopefully, to the present to make the present clearer somehow. Okay? Unless you're in a why, then it's just to prove your point. Because remember, you've got the 3 Ps of prove, position, and process. And process is a curiosity thing. So you add curiosity to that, and it's proving or positioning. And those two don't work. They're like using questions to tell people, even though you're asking a question. You get what I'm saying, don't you?
No,
you're supposed to say yes.
Could the clarity versus certainty also come around to waiting for certainty before?
Talk to me about that. That is like I'm talking to an expert.
Well,
yeah.
In that perception of the need for change, it would be maybe waiting for a perfect solution or perfect certainty
timing
of everything just right before committing to that change.
Absolutely. And then what does that build? Something else that you used to be excellent on.
Procrastination.
Not really a mind model, but it's an outcome. It's a result.
Procrastination.
Pardon me?
Procrastination.
Procrastination, and procrastination is frequently causes what triggers what is the thing that frequently triggers procrastinators have this and causes them to procrastinate?
Perfectionism.
Perfect. Perfect. Dan, you guys are hot tonight. Yeah. I know. I mean, that's what he said last week on this whole thing. And now he's into testing mode as opposed to perfectionist mode and getting his ass in gear, which is crazy good.
Blair, would you consider perfectionism a type of rationalization?
It is. And it tends to bridge on justification rationalization, which is a why, but it flips back and forth because it can also be what's in house. So you got to watch it, because if you're loading the emotion of it first, you're going to stay stuck. But if you load in terms of, look at it in terms of listing what you can do and you take action, then it's not. Then it's part of that what, how success model. However, pure procrastination by itself is just somebody who's fallen in love with making that list of one or more things or events that's in your what's. That's what what's are. And that whole listing thing, they want to write a list and they review that list and figure out that they need to either add or write a different list. And to figure out the next step to do, they need to write that list. And then they better find out the next list after that. And then they forget their point in the first place and go back to the beginning and rework everything. Connie, you're smiling like, oh God, I know somebody that used to be like that.
Well, he still might be just a tad.
It's okay for just a tad, but he used like what you described last week was he was like this. Now it's like this.
Yes.
So that's a huge improvement.
It is.
Cool. Okay. So Tim, I'm going to, because Sherry is not on the call, you get to talk about naming and labeling. So, and do your best and I'll help you out where you can. How does, so when we're talking, I'll just review this with you. The question is, and by the way, I have my sheet of 5 things here, 5 key drivers. People don't need to change unless they perceive a need to change. And it's what mind models do this, and naming and labeling fit into that. And what causes naming and labeling to be a gap for people if people don't change, well, not if people don't change, but people don't change unless they perceive a need to change. So how can we use naming and labeling to help mitigate that problem?
Well, because naming and, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because naming and labeling it actually brings it to the now. It's actually making you aware of it. And if you are not naming and labeling, your block or whatever it is, then how can you, you're not identifying it to be able to work through that process to get past it.
And what happened to you prior to going through all of the mind model training? Like when you were driving around being a trucker pre mind models? Because like this one was just such a sweet one to bring up for you because of where you were. So might you share a little bit of that and tie it into naming and labeling and what you didn't do and what you're doing now?
Well, I definitely was not naming and labeling. When I was trying to work through things, I was finding myself stuck a lot because I didn't know how to name and label.
Yep.
And I wasn't naming and labeling what was going on so I wasn't identifying it to be able to even know what it was that I needed to work through. And
what happened as a consequence of that?
I remained stuck.
And being stuck, how did you, what?
I was basically just spinning my wheels.
Yeah, you were spinning your wheels. And how did that feel?
It's very overwhelming and frustrating.
And what would happen with that overwhelming and frustrated feeling? And where would that go in your life?
It was going nowhere. I found myself just getting overwhelmed, frustrated, and I'd finally just quit. Basically, I would just throw my hands in the air and say, to heck with it.
And what kind of mood would you bring home?
I was very frustrated, angry. My wife just put on her angry. And yeah, just frustration and
maybe we should throw Rebecca on here for a minute and get the other side of how he behaved anyway.
I think she said she was driving.
Oh, she's driving?
Yeah, she's on her way home from a meeting. She'll be here soon, though.
Oh, okay, great. But anyway, the point being is, like that, all of that frustration and overwhelm has a tendency to build up, and yet we want to release it. And the problem here is that we wind up, the people we love the most are usually the people who get dumped on the most with this random emotional baggage that we can't name and label. We just are feeling, and we're triggered by any little thing, and we let it out in their direction.
Absolutely. I mean, I would come home just frustrated. I mean, and the thing is I'm out there driving and I'm dealing with traffic and I'm dealing with other people, and that just would, little things would set me off and get me even more frustrated. I would come home and I would just vent that frustration. And a lot of times I know that Becky felt like I was directing that at her, even though I wasn't. It was just me releasing that frustration and venting. But there was a lot of times that she felt like it was directed at her, even though it really had nothing to do with her. So
true. So true. Yep. Oh, right. Then he would get angry and quit losing self-confidence. Or quit and lose self-confidence, I think is what she meant. Yeah. So true. Because self-confidence takes a nosedive, and it takes a nosedive when you get into a downward spiral there. And this is one of those key things. And it's about naming, labeling, and the perception of this. Because without naming and labeling it, you can't figure out even what you're perceiving. If you think about it, you don't know what you're perceiving. You just feel this stuff. And it's frustration. And you're naming and labeling frustration and angry and, crap. And you feel like quitting and all of this stuff. But if you can't name and label it, it's almost impossible to say, this is what I can change. That's where mind models come in, because they're named and labeled and they're about that whole piece. But it has to be done. And Dwayne, you said about safety versus comfort, and it's got to be done in a safe environment. However, it's got to be a little uncomfortable. So can you build on that, please?
Well, most people feel comfortable in their own skin, whether they're right or wrong. And it's an internal feeling. And the change kind of triggers I got to step out of this comfort zone. And then they start to feel like they're not safe, because they try to flip-flop them. So then now they're feeling unsafe because they're not comfortable anymore. When in reality, there is no safety issue. It's just something internal that they're putting out to the external world.
And what is the consequence of that flip-flopping between the safety and comfort? So they're a little bit uncomfortable, so they feel unsafe. What does that do to the change process?
It staggers it, it slows it.
It throws brakes on it right there. It may not bring it to a complete stop, but it sure as hell slows it down. And that's a major piece. And when you do this and it's not named and labeled, and you have safety versus comfort issues, and you're into judgment, what happens to self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem? All going down. And so really what happens here is that perception is absolutely critical, and there's no easy way out of this. Is when you start looking at the whole thing, think about this for a second. Without mind models, how do you know how to get out of that? Or do you do like what most people do, is you figure out a way, you beat yourself up enough until you feel like you can't cope with it anymore, and then you just frickin' stick your head in the sand and pretend like everything's okay. Yeah. Oh, Connie, I loved your look. And Tim is yeah. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but is that not how the vast majority of people behave?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they fall into that 1.2 attempts.
Fill that in, like, because not everybody on the call might know that piece. So share that.
The research says that most people will only try 1.2 times before they quit.
Yep. That's very, very valid, proven psychological research done at numerous universities throughout the US. And the interesting part was, how many times will an entrepreneur attempt before they quit versus an average individual? And most entrepreneurs will go beyond 10 times. Will keep on pounding their head against the brick wall. And the really successful ones don't see these as failures. They don't see their attempts in a way of being stupid, dumb, or wrong. And most of them, when they actually have things that everybody else would define as failures, they tend to ignore those rather than the attempt. And they go to school on what they learned from that attempt. But the attempt is not a big deal to them. It's sort of like, next. And they try it again. And every time it's like water off a duck's back, except for what they learned.
Well, one of the talks that I'd heard, and I can't remember the guy's name. I just know he was a multi-billionaire. And he said that out of every 100 attempts, he would succeed one time.
Yeah.
So he would try 100 times before he got one win.
Exactly. Which is not far off what most, it would be 2 to 3% of the time. So 2 or 3 out of 100, you'd have real good win, like major wins that would completely do that. When you were, I used to work with what was a merchant banking company, I forget, a venture capitalist. And he called himself a merchant banker, but he was really a venture capitalist. And he'd shoot for 1 in 10 to break even and 3 out of 100 to really make a killing. And when that happened, every time he found those, he was away to the races. But he'd expect to lose or read through and sift through stuff. And it was 2 to 3 out of 100. He'd actually go through and make those work. And out of those 2 or 3 out of 100, he'd have 1 in 10 of those would be a huge win for him. That's, I just remembered his stats on that. So you have to go through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of trial and error in this life. We got to figure this out. Now, the quick thing here is mind models give us a bit of a shortcut, frankly, because these have been tested. So, Dwayne, you've tried mind models, right? How do they work for you? Like, how many times did you have to test them, try them out before a mind model worked for you?
Well, when I started learning of this and I started applying the mind models to problems and situations, it was like instantly working. I mean, it would, when I would start asking myself questions, I guess my own internal question concept or whatever, I would start to get more resourceful and start to do more things more effective and quit judging myself more. I started evaluating.
Yeah, totally. And that was almost instantaneous.
Yes.
Interesting. Tim, for you, what was your experience?
Well, the biggest thing for me is before, where I was getting stuck and not knowing how to get out of that stuck state. Now I'm able to actually name and label how I'm feeling or what's going on, because I have to identify it first. And then I can kind of walk myself through the mind models of, what can I control? What can I influence about this situation? And I can ask myself questions based on the who, what, how, and and keep walking through that process to getting myself resourceful and getting out of whatever situation that I'm in. And so it's and that in return has boosted my self-confidence, and and it's just it's turned a downward spiral into an upward, a positive thing.
Very, very good. So how long does it take you when you try on mind models now to get an effective outcome or result?
Anywhere from, usually right around 5 minutes.
Okay. So takes a little bit of time, but how long did it take before?
I would stay stuck for, it seemed like forever. I didn't know how to get out of that situation, to get out of that stuck state in my own head. And now it's just a matter of, just a few minutes of walking through the questions and thinking through it in my head. And I'm sure as I get more effective at walking through that and it becomes more habitual, it will get, quicker and quicker. I'll be able to do it without even thinking about it, really. Yep,
exactly. And when you're out here, for those of you that are watching, actually all four of our panelists here, Trevor, Dwayne, John, Tim, are all coming to Mind Model Coach training, where you're going to be learning a mind model coaching methodology. And that is a methodology that takes mind models, does sort of what you guys are doing naturally, but gives you a formalized process to actually be able to instantaneously just engage in your own mind and walk yourself through a process, get it to a result in minutes or seconds, and also be able to do this with others on average in 2 to 5 minutes to get people resourceful and unstuck. So that's powerful. And that I'm looking forward to, because that is proven over and over and over again. A few thousand people I've trained this model on, and or methodology actually, and it works very, very well. And in virtually every life situation. In one of the training programs that I ran, one of my people that was volunteering with me to help me put on the course, who had taken the program, actually had her father got called. She was, about 4 or 5 hours driving time away from her father's, because she drove up for the weekend. And she got a call from her sister saying that her father, who was not feeling the best for quite a while, had taken a severe turn for the worst and was, going to pass away. And this wasn't just a random thing. This time it was for real sort of thing. Anyway, she broke down crying and she didn't know what to do. Anyway, one of my mind model coaches, it was called Operant Effectual Coaching. One of my participants in OE coaching actually helped her through that process. And she went from crying her eyes out to getting resourceful in literally just slightly under 5 minutes. And boom, she was out the door. She knew what to do. She wasn't conflicted. She was clear, and she had her path. And it was amazing. Death and dying issues right through to pregnancy. You name it, job loss, finding a job, getting resourceful, all of these issues. Mind Model Coach training will help you guys facilitate people or yourselves through all of these issues. So it's quite powerful that way. Okay, so with that, definitely Marina, definitely feel stuck in my own head. Interesting. So what might you be able to do about that, Marina? And if this is the first time on, would you like to come on as a panelist? And
do it.
First time on.
Come on, Marina.
Yeah, you can jump on here. We don't mind. I can help. Pardon me?
I said we don't bite.
Yeah, we don't bite. We might ask you some questions, but we don't bite, and we'll be as gentle as we possibly can. So all you have to do is put up your hand or say, yes, I'll do it. And we'll get Trevor to promote you as a panelist, and we can meet you and we can talk to you, and we can help you potentially get less stuck in your own head if you're up for it. So just let us know. First time on, she's nervous. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, moving along here. I'd love to work on that because I love working on real life problems, like real ones. I mean, these are all not fake ones, but these are people that have learned mind models, are resourceful. And then I was thinking what we could do is have Marina, if she wanted to, have share a little bit about herself, about her stuck state, and how she's stuck in her own head. And we could talk to her and ask some questions to maybe get her more resourceful. And, there's very little downside to this because we're not going to be, I'll make sure people don't try and tell you what to do. But we will be asking you questions to see if you could get yourself unstuck and a little bit more resourceful. So that's what mind model coaching is all about, is helping people get resourceful. And we're going to be teaching people how to do that. Marina said, sure. All right.
Okay.
Come on.
Yay.
So I'll just promote you to a panelist, Marina, and then we'll tell you how to turn your video and audio on.
Yep. I'm thrilled to have you on. First time. Love it. Hey, Marina. There we go.
So you're still muted. Bottom left corner is usually where the icon is that you press to unmute yourself. If you're on a laptop, it's like a little microphone. Uh-oh.
No, that's okay. She's working on it.
My
Marina,
microphone is unmuted.
Okay,
yeah. It's unmuted. There you go. We can hear you, and now we can see you.
Okay.
Perfect. So are you using a phone?
I am on a phone, yes.
Okay, cool. No worries. No worries at all. Doesn't matter. It's cool. It's totally cool. Just wondering. So I'm glad that you could jump on. So would you care to, Dwayne's waving hi. So we're a friendly group. We're nice.
There we go. Let me see everybody.
There you go. Good. Perfect. So so anyway, can you sort of fill me in a little bit about what seems to be the issue here or the problem?
And first of all, I wanted to say thank you for doing the live with Kat.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That's why I'm on here today. But and
you're the one then that I sent you the link to.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I saw that just the other day and I thought, oh, damn, she said something, and in your language pattern, it seemed like, this could really, well, you said you're really looking for something like this, and this might really help. So
yeah, because I know I definitely relate to a lot of what she was saying as far as, I'm also Russian. We grew up, in a similar culture, and, you were expected certain things were expected of you, and, you instantly kind of grew into the person. You can't stand out, and you have to be, fit into this little box, and, then things happen in life and you're like even more and more into a box. And, now as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I keep self-sabotaging and like limiting myself. And I very clearly know I'm doing it. And yet, like, I keep, just completely bumping myself, still at the same kind of corner wall or whatever.
So who do you mind if I just ask the other panelists who here can relate to that?
I can.
Yeah. Okay. So basically almost everybody on the call can relate to that in some way or form or fashion. Kat really did hit the nail on the head though, for if you're Russian and female, that demographic is like, oh my God, spot on, because like she said it with such genuine, pardon me for saying it this way, genuine pain and understanding. And
Yes.
then you go, God, I can feel her pain. And yeah, that was so true. That was so true.
And I like totally related to, I mean, just to her words, because that's exactly how, you know, it was for me. And then, you know, I've even attempted like the Marissa Peer, you know, her RTT, you know, therapy. And I know, you know, I'm still kind of working through some of that, but it's like, even though I think I've made progress, I haven't moved past enough to, you know, see a difference in my business or,
okay.
You know, my life.
So how can we help? I actually have a few ideas here of how we can help you. I was going to ask, how can we help you? But I think...
I may not know yet.
Well, yeah, you may or may not know, but there are, like, mind models are pretty effective when you start hanging around here. And the people on this call, other than Trevor and myself, Trevor's been around for a few years, but Dwayne, John, and Connie, and Tim have all been around for months, not years. So, you know, so what we can do is start listening. Hopefully you guys were listening to what Marina said. It is Marina, correct? Is that how you pronounce it? Okay.
Yeah,
what Marina said. And start talking about mind models that she may be not conscious of and gapped out on. And then what we can do, Marina, once we start, and this is work for them, because all of these guys are coming into Mind Model Coach training. So this is a good jump start to that training coming up in at the end of March and again in May. But it's also going to be a place for them to be able to start right now to start listening to language patterns and starting to recognize what's there. And Rebecca's jumping on here as well, too. Rebecca Graft is Tim's wife, and she's coming here as well. So she's on the ball here and typing away busily. And I go, okay, so Rebecca just said confidence versus self-confidence, which is a mind model of ours.
Mm-hmm.
You probably relate to that some days you feel like you're confident, your self-confidence is high, and other days it's just not, you got to fake it practically.
Right. And I definitely feel like I think Kat also touched on that when you guys were on live, is that, you know, you really crave for the appreciation and the validation from external forces, you know, versus just being confident.
And that's right. No, and that's just confidence, because when it's externally verifiable, it is always confidence. And this is a weird one, because normally when it's external, you want it, but with confidence versus self-confidence, you want to be able to use external external resources there to verify where you're coming from, but you need your internal self to actually test it and to accept that piece yourself. So external versus internal, Rebecca, you're spot on as well. So you, Marina, probably are not identifying what is truly external and what's truly internal, because external people validating you will cause you to feel good inside.
And my biggest breakthrough came when I learned to use effective versus ineffective. In other words, what I was doing wasn't necessarily wrong. It just wasn't effective in that situation. So I started identifying what was effective, what was ineffective in what I was doing. And I think that was my first big breakthrough with Blair.
Good job, Dwayne. Spot on. Trevor, you jumped in there too and went in a big way.
I was just saying to what he was saying. Like,
yeah, I know.
Like, I've seen that with Dwayne, but also that with myself as well.
Yeah, going back to the early days, quite a while ago. That was a big one. So who else? Dwayne, did you want to fill her in more? Okay, Tim, do you want to jump in there? Go for it.
Big one for me, at least for myself, was control versus influence. And the reason being is I am a bit of a perfectionist. I would get stuck and I would find myself, but the biggest break for me was when I learned the control versus influence and what I could truly, because I was trying to control everything, trying to, be that perfectionist, trying to control every situation, frustrated because I couldn't control, and finally that was the big breakthrough for me, is when I finally learned the control versus influence of, I really can only control myself and how I react to certain situations. And other than that, the only thing I can really do is influence. And once that set in my mind, it just made everything a lot, the word that comes to mind is clear. It made things a lot more clear, and I made a lot more sense in my own head.
And see, one of the things I want to build on Tim, on your stuff there, because you used clear right at the end. And one of the mind models we talked about earlier, and the other part of this was clarity versus certainty. And clarity is the thing that people want. People crave clarity, but most people think they want certainty. They want to know exactly what's happening next, like a guarantee in life. That used to be the case like hundreds of years ago, and growing up in Russia, you actually experienced some of that certainty. It's not great, but it doesn't prepare you for the speed of change that we're going through right now, because you knew where you were, you knew where you're going. You may not like it, but life was stable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that comes with a double-edged sword, because it's stable and you know what life is, but it's boring, it's predictable, it's everything that's there. And then all of a sudden you come over here and you start realizing, God, nothing's stable, nothing's the same, everything's changing daily, if not weekly on you. And you now have to adapt and change and figure stuff out that you didn't think you'd have to figure out. And nobody showed you how to do any of this stuff. Yet you're expected to make it make sense. Do you relate to that, Marina?
Well, in some ways, because we came here in '93.
Oh, okay. So you've been
right after the fall of the wall, and when everything opened and there was flood of everything into Russia. And I'm from St. Petersburg, so it's a huge city.
Yeah.
So I can't remember where Kat's from, but like St. Petersburg is like New York, everything's always, it's a rich city, even though, you do have a very large gap between the poor and the wealthy, or the top class. But, we definitely, before leaving, I was 13 when we left, actually on my birthday, but, the last few years of that was, very, very big changes.
Yeah.
From, being in a pretty certain state, to, having coupons and tokens to go buy soap and sugar and flour and stuff, things just completely turned around. And then, of course, coming to the US and kind of smack dab in Mississippi is very big change.
Yeah.
Nothing, if anybody's from Mississippi, we did like it there, but it is a big difference between, a city like St. Petersburg and anywhere in Mississippi.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
And it definitely was a culture shock.
Yeah. And culture shock also generally infers a coping shock. How do I cope with this? And so you are forced to adapt without knowing what you're trying to adapt to. So you can't name and label it. You just know you need to change, which inserts a lot of uncertainty. So that level of uncertainty generally people go for the instant opposite, which is certainty. Mm-hmm. And that usually is the fatal flaw in that obvious flip, especially today, because clarity is a questioning process. Certainty is a telling process. Certainty is you tell yourself, this is how it is now. This is what's happening. This is what I'm doing. And certainty never lasts, because no matter what you tell yourself, it won't last. Even at the regular speed of change today, you're lucky if it'll last 30 days. It definitely won't last 90 days. So everything shifts a lot. Where you had things that you were sort of certain of, now you're uncertain about everything, and you want that certainty back. But the only way to get stability here is to figure out, how do I ask questions differently, and how do I think things through more effectively? And Dwayne was referring to judgment versus evaluation. And that mind model of judgment versus evaluation is highly effective, because you start taking a look at, what am I making judgments around? Now, one of the things you can do, all of these things that these mind models that I'm talking about are on our background area in Facebook and on YouTube, which you can go back and take a look at, and take a look at the lessons in detail. Okay, just so that you know. So if you're saying, okay, geez, you're throwing a lot of mind models at me, Blair, I'm getting confused. Well, if you need to understand clarity versus certainty, we did a whole thing on that. And when Tim was referring to, he was talking about self, other, and situation, in recognizing how to control himself, or like trying to take control over his life. He could only control himself, but he was trying to control everything, the others as well. Unfortunately, people also try and control the situation. And it does sound like a little bit, hey, Rebecca, glad you could join us. And anyway, it sounds like, there's still leftover pieces of trying to control the situation you're in, as opposed to figuring out the clarity. And when you figure out clarity, you also find opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's a very interesting thing. When there is clarity, there is also more opportunity, because you can start questioning yourself to see how you can start influencing change around you, where before you thought you had to put up with change. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I listened to when you were talking about that other person that you had some sessions with, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then one of the things that happens there is the sessions may help you alleviate some of the emotional baggage with that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you need to do then, or might want to do, is look at how can you actually leverage yourself into shifting to gain a more leverageable state than just overcoming emotions. In other words, how can you change, I call them mind models, and how can you shift your mind models so you can control yourself more effectively, and you start changing the questions that you ask. And that speed of change starts happening. I mean, I don't know when you got on the call, but Tim and John, and Dwayne to some degree here as well, but Tim and John talked about the early days of learning mind models and the speed at which they were able to get control back into their lives and make decisions and stuff. Whereas like John last week, and Connie especially, literally said, and I loved the line, John can now change frequently in a blink of an eye. And sometimes it takes them 10 minutes, but, maybe 30 minutes at the outside. And I go, okay, holy crap. That's huge, from days, weeks, and sometimes years to figure out the change. I mean, hello, we're compressing time here a whole lot. And when you can compress time like that and to have it usually in seconds, almost instantaneous, and Tim shared like under 5 minutes, and I go, holy crap, to permanently stuck. Is that fair, Tim? Before, permanently stuck. Okay, permanently stuck on anything that he was thinking about. Well, not everything, but some things that he'd get stuck on, to getting resourceful and unstuck and knowing where to go and what to try in 5 minutes or under 5 minutes.
Faster than that. He doesn't give himself enough credit.
And that's his wife, just like John last week. His wife spoke up and shot to shit when his time estimation, and it's even faster. So that's what mind models do, because they don't work at giving you answers. They work at getting you resourceful. And resourcefulness is a state of mind, first of all, created by mind models intentionally, but they're identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable, not like mindset. Mindset is belief-based. And if you have a life experience, whatever that might be, like for me, it was my dad going into a coma. Pardon me. I used to teach mindset training at life skills colleges. Life skills, I teach life skills and mindset training on the side because I thought it was the cat's ass at the time. But when my dad went into a coma, it was not, it sort of hit the curb. Like it was the first thing that left in a major way. And it was the thing that I was counting on to save my ass, and it left. So it really was ineffective. So I flipped into mind models. Well, actually didn't flip into mind models. I started researching and figuring out, because I did have life skills and I did have enough of those skill sets and pieces to start figuring stuff out. And that is something that I sort of see you doing. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're attempting to figure out a way to get more resourceful, and you feel like you could be, but you don't know what to do differently. Is that accurate?
I would say so.
So what part of this what parts of this is making sense, and what parts of are still feeling a little gapped out on?
I mean, I'm still, this is like the first time I'm really listening. So
I know it's a big ask. Just do your best, stumble around, like that's how we figure this stuff out. Because everybody on this call, everybody has been here where you are right now. Like we all start, like me too. We all started here not knowing where to go, but you got to spit something out and go, I think I get this. I don't get anything else.
I mean, the effective, ineffective, I have heard that before, and it may have even been one of yours, or maybe a trainer talking about, what you were talking about. And that does make a lot of sense, because, with everything's happened in my life, I normally kind of judge myself. Oh, I did this wrong, or I failed at this, and whatever, finish the sentence. So
so one of the things can I work with you on that one thing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you like judging yourself?
No, but it's an internal voice that I literally have to work very hard to shut it up.
Yes, you do, currently. But what if you could shift it by one question that you needed to ask yourself? And all you needed to do is ask yourself the first of 3 questions, but you just have to ask the first one. The other 2 will follow.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So anybody want to jump in here and sort of guide her through I think you guys all know the process here of evaluation, self-evaluation. So what's the first question? Go ahead, John.
The first question is, what's working? What's working right now.
Yep. And especially when you're starting to judge yourself, doing the interrupt with a simple question of what's working. And you might say nothing to start off with. And so I'd ask yourself again, honestly, what's working? And the question or the answer that I give people like yourself who are brand new to this, who haven't practiced it at all, is the first thing, if they have asked themselves that question, is the answer to that question is asking this question, what is working? That just worked for me. And you go, oh, damn, I just shifted myself out of beating myself up, judging myself, doing all the stuff I used to do. I just broke that model, that habit. I just stopped it by changing the language going on between my ears. All that self-talk instantly stops by saying 2 words. Well, and a hyphen, 3 words technically. What is working, but hyphenated with what's working. Okay? And then you go, damn, okay, what's working is I ask myself a question. What else worked? I saw this situation and see it as a problem, but a problem at its core also has an opportunity. Otherwise, you can't have a problem. Think about that one for a little bit. Everybody on this call here, think about this. A problem at its core must also have an opportunity to it. Everything in life is sort of like, I hate to get sort of semi-mystic here, but the deeper I go into this stuff, the more yin and yang there is. And like what's bad is good, what's good is bad, like that whole thing. It's like, holy crap, you know, you can get into this stuff pretty deep. But at the end of the day, you think about that for a second and you go, hold it. I was beating myself up. So everything that I'm beating myself up means I'm identifying what didn't work. That means I've got the skills and abilities to flip that around and identify what did work. I'm just not practicing that part of this. But that's the other side of it. So what am I doing in spite of all the shit I'm beating myself up on? What did I do that worked in this situation? Well, the first thing is you did something. You attempted, you went out there, you put out effort, you did something. You took an action in order to screw up. You took an action. But taking that action gives you an opportunity to learn from your mistake. So that's another thing you just did that was effective. You're starting to learn from your mistake, from my mistake. Okay, it was terrible. I hate it, but can I know what not to do next time? It's sort of like Edison was, some news reporter said, you failed 10,000 times. And the guy said, no, it's not failing 10,000 times. It's literally, I know 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb, or 9,999 ways not to make a light bulb, and one way to make a light bulb. Do you know those? No, but he kept notes. So it was always something that he could evaluate, and it became something that was externally verifiable. It was no longer him personally. And you notice how when you judge yourself, it's you personally? But if you go to an evaluation and just think of it, okay, I'm going to evaluate what I'm doing right now. Do you notice like evaluation feels like, you can change your clothes. It's like skills and behaviors, things that you did, you can change easily, right?
Okay.
Are they you? Are your clothes you? No, they're just behaviors. You can change your behaviors. You don't need to change you. Therefore, telling yourself that you're bad, you're wrong, you're whatever is not accurate, actually, because it's not about you. It's about your behavior was ineffective. That's how come we want to go to effective versus ineffective, not using words like right, wrong, good, or bad. Those are all judgmental words. Right, wrong, good, or bad imposes on our brain a way of understanding and functionally using that language to make it personal to us. I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm good, I'm bad. But when you say, even if you say, I'm effective, do you think that it's you, or does it feel like it's sort of out there? Not quite you. It's like a behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how we've taken a look and labeled and put meaning to effective and ineffective. It's things that are around us. It's not us. And that's such a change. That's the difference. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody got anything to add to that?
This might be going too
Go
far
for it.
afield, but the the piece that you were talking earlier about having a lot of expectations around roles. When I've got some experience with that, and when you perceive that people have a lot of expectations of you, it leads to again expecting to be judged, and then that leads, at least in my case, led to a lot of self-judgment as well. And then there's also, it builds beliefs about deserving.
Mm-hmm.
Big time. Well done. So what question might you be able to ask Maureen around deserving? So Marina, do you relate with that deserving piece?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How's that holding you back? Or is that holding you back?
Oh, it is.
And so how is it holding you back?
I mean, the whole fear of being judged, and being perceived as I am or as I'm not. Definitely not putting myself out there, in my business, or shoot, in life. And I'm a big introvert to start with, so this is like
Yeah, I hear you.
closing me in even more.
Yep. But you're breaking out of that, like right here on the call. First things first.
I'm working on it.
You are. So what I'd like you to do is evaluate it and go, so what part is working for you right now? What's working for you?
Oh gosh. Kind of stumped.
Okay, so you've got people around here that have seen you, heard you, and can relate with you. You can, what's that game show where you phone in or whatever? Or
yeah.
What's the phrase?
I don't know, call the audience or whatever.
Yeah, right. Sure. So see what the audience has to say. See what Dwayne, Rebecca, or Tim, or Connie, or John have to say. Ask one of them.
Sure.
John relates to the deserving. He brought it up.
Yeah, go for it. But I definitely do relate a lot to that. And it's, just through everything that's happened. And then, growing up partially there, partially here, kind of not really belonging to one or the other anymore, or not yet. And
these are all belief pieces.
Right.
And what we want to do is we want to park the beliefs, and we want to go to externally identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable models that allow us to evaluate ourselves and see where we're actually at.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can move forward from there because we've got a very good place to begin.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, what are you noticing that Marina's doing that is effective now? What is she doing that's effective?
I think she's relating very clearly. And I would say, you know, she was just talking about belonging. You know, to my perception, she clearly belongs. I would, if she hadn't said she was Russian, I would have no idea. So, you know, she's blended and adapted extremely well. I thought I heard a little Mississippi accent in there, or Southern accent.
I've been in
maybe.
South Carolina for 20 years, so now it's just South Carolinian.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I heard
It's
Southern.
not much worse or much better. It's
And
you know what,
you
Sherry,
showed
you're bang
creativity.
on. Seeking clarity is what Sherry just typed in, you know, and said seeking clarity. And what you're doing is you're telling your story over again. You're well practiced at telling your story, especially to yourself.
mm-hmm.
But your story, your model of the world is not looking at where your strengths are. So what do you do that's effective right now? What are you doing right now? Like, Marina, definitely feel stuck in my own head.
Right.
What, when you type that in, what was that? What is effective about saying that?
I mean, at least identifying my state.
Exactly. Can you move forward if you don't identify where you're at?
Right.
You can't. So is that effective for you?
I mean, it's identified now. Yeah.
No. Like, okay,
I mean,
now I'm going to start calling bullshit. Okay, hold it 2 seconds. No, stop. Sorry, I'm cutting you off because you're practicing chunking out the pieces that you're practicing your own behaviors of staying stuck. So what I want you to practice is recognizing what you did effectively. So what part of that was effective? And say it like you mean it.
I mean, asking for help.
Yes. What else? That's a big one. Yes, but asking for help, identifying feeling stuck in my own head. What did you do right there? Say it again. You said it before perfectly, but then you started becoming small again and drifting right back into yourself rather than keeping it outside and verifiable.
Okay. Sorry, I just lost my own train of thought there.
That's okay. This happens a lot right now because this is brand new stuff that you're training your brain to go in this way. And this brain pattern that you're practicing right now will trick you by trying to, well, it causes you to literally forget what to say or do differently because you don't have it wired in your brain yet. And these are just the habits. The habits of beating yourself up and judging yourself will take over because that's how your brain is wired. So we are doing rewiring the mind right now with mind models. Okay? So what worked?
And welcome to the hot seat. We've all been there.
Welcome to the hot seat. We've all been there. Yeah, sorry about this, but like it doesn't.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be uncomfortable, but not unsafe. Okay, like, and that's the other one. It's safety versus comfort. Safety is you're safe, but you're uncomfortable. And literally, to get your brain to change, you have to feel uncomfortable because the brain chemistry will not produce new ganglia. It will not grow new dendrites so that you actually connect to new synapses unless you feel uncomfortable. Okay. Or, you know, you feel like confusion. Discomfort or confusion will cause new ganglia, new dendrites to grow. Proven scientific fact, not my opinion. Okay. So, Marina, again, What did you do that was effective? What worked?
All right. Reached out.
Yep.
And seeking help. And
what was that?
Clarity. Seeking help.
Seeking clarity, seeking help. So you reached out. That's one behavior that you did. You sought clarity. Mm-hmm. What else?
I mean, that is stepping out.
Stepping out. And one more. What are you willing to do right now that you didn't do before? You might have been willing to, but you're actually doing it right now. You are stepping out. You are doing this.
Taking on, I mean, I'm learning, and I am, taking criticism or suggestions, or however you want to call it.
Taking criticism, taking suggestions. What else? Because I said one more and you fired off two more.
Overachiever much?
And are these things effective? Is what you're doing effective? Yes.
So yes.
Sorry, what was that?
Yes.
Yes, it is effective. So do you feel like you're judging yourself right now?
Not really.
Good. You shouldn't, because this is mostly an evaluation. So do you feel bad about what you're saying?
No.
Great. Do you feel like you have a direction to go in?
A better direction than I started with.
Still confused, granted.
Still a little bit in the middle.
A little bit, but that's normal. That's what you're supposed to feel like when you're making changes. Who here, by a raise of hands on the people who are on the panelist, who here has felt that when they tried applying mind models early on? Everybody. Me too. All the time, because it's confusing as hell, because you're trying something you don't know what to do differently. If you don't have that feeling when you're trying a new mind model on, you're not doing it. You're doing the old stuff. You're practicing how to stay stuck in your old crap. Okay? So this should be screaming, I'm doing a great job right now. This is highly effective. Because I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm doing it differently than I would have done it before. Would you have just normally sat there, thought about this stuff, and just said this stuff to yourself like water off a duck's back, like it's no big deal? Is that how you would have done it? Just like pretended everything's okay and just said it? Yes or no?
Like, would I have
would you just say these 9 things that you just said that were effective?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Would you have rattled them off if I wasn't asking you questions?
Probably not.
Right. So would you have stayed stuck?
Yeah.
So are you stuck right now?
I mean, I can't say I'm like...
Zooming ahead, I'm not asking. See, we have to notice. See, mind models is all about noticing that tipping point. And that tipping point is...
I would definitely say I am not stuck now.
Right, exactly. And that's like when you, I don't know, I mean, we have snow up to the yin-yang here, and it's icy, and it's
75 degrees here today.
It's what?
It was 75 degrees here today.
Oh, shut up. It's like minus 32 here today.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, you can be. That's fine. Okay. Anyway, it's like, I don't, you know what? The weather sometimes puts me in a why state. Like, why the hell am I here? So anyway, the point being here is focusing in on this stuff, you're recognizing you are moving ahead. And it's got to be incremental growth. Do you think you should have a breakthrough that is like earth-shattering and groundbreaking and all of a sudden the heavens open up and angels sing and life changes? It would be nice, I know, but is that what you expect?
Right.
But no, right is not the answer. Is that what you expect?
I mean, no. I mean, I don't think anything just like booming.
But is that sort of the part of that judgment thing that until that happens, nothing's really changed?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Does it sort of feel sort of vaguely familiar in the background?
Right.
In other words, if it's not a huge change, it's not really a change.
Right. Right.
That is the trick of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Because it denies you fair, balanced evaluation. Fair, balanced evaluation means you got to look at the small shifts, not the big ones. The small micro improvements are the things that you get there, not the big dramatic ones.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to get super comfortable with doing a lot of little ones so they feel safe, so that they can actually take control and transform their own life. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So small changes, not big ones. Externally verifiable changes. How do you get an externally verifiable change right now, Marina?
Oh gosh.
How can you externally verify a change right now?
I mean, that I'm here right
You're
now.
here and
And you're a witness.
And I'm a witness. And how many of them did I count?
9.
Yes. Is this a figment of your imagination?
No.
Is it externally verifiable?
Yes.
Connie, Rebecca, Dwayne, did you guys concur that there were 9 distinct things?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Tim and John can throw in, and Trevor too. Yes, they saw it too. This is not an opinion. This is externally verifiable. You made changes. You identified the changes that you made, and you made them. Now, none of them individually is a huge change, but they're all real. They're not an opinion. They're fact about what you did to make an improvement. So what's another thing that you can notice about what you just did that's also now externally verifiable? Were other people able to verify your changes?
Mm-hmm.
Is that externally verified?
Right.
Hey,
So,
Blair.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, if I may, I'm totally relating with this because what I was talking about earlier about, it taking me 5 minutes. I think what was going on is like Marina, I guess I was kind of not seeing it in myself, I'm looking for the heavens to open, so to speak, in this big, huge change. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't necessarily seeing being there, being it me, I was having a hard time seeing that change within myself. But Becky comes in and blows it completely, my 5 minutes or whatever, completely out of the water, because externally she's seeing those smaller, just like you're talking about, she's seeing those smaller shifts. And, we need that external piece to help see it in ourselves, I guess, because when we're in the thick of it, I don't think we really recognize it. Maybe we are looking for the heavens to open and, and all those things. This is awesome.
Cool. Lauren's got a thing here she wrote in the chat. This is fantastic. I do deep unconscious clearing with hypnosis. That's great. This is what I've been missing for conscious reprogramming and making minor to mid-level shifts to help identify bigger blocks. Very complimentary. First time viewer, I'm very impressed. Thank you for saying that. And I'm glad you're on here because, like, honest to God, this stuff works, and it works deeply as well as consciously and subconsciously. We do it the other way around. We get this stuff happening conscious, so we shift our subconscious. You're doing it from hypnosis. And I'm not really fussy which way you do it. It's just get it done. Like, go out there and do it. And so, Lauren, your question is, my question is, how state dependent is this modality? And I go, it's not overly heavily state dependent. All you got to do, in fact, you can be in mood wise, you can be depressed, you can be not depressed, you can be whatever mood you can, so long as you can demand of yourself to answer the question, what is working honestly? Because the second question you're going to ask is, what's not working? So that you know what to stop. And Marina, that's where I would go, is ask you. So Marina, what is not working for you in this area?
I mean, for me, as far as like just now, I mean, me constantly judging myself is definitely not working.
Cool. Okay, just one thing. It's all I need. Well, you can get two things. We have a 3-2-1 rule here. When we're doing evaluations, when we're teaching people how to evaluate themselves. 3 things that worked, 2 things that didn't work, and 1 thing to change. So you could give me one other thing that didn't work. Most people sort of can really do verbal diarrhea on like 50 things that didn't work because they're so well practiced at it. We want to limit you to 2 max. Okay. So this is the 3-2-1. And I'm glad you found that answer fantastic. Thank you. For your comments there, Lauren's. So anyway, so Marina, judging yourself, I'm going to limit you to 1 right now because you're super well practiced at this stuff. So I don't want you don't need more practice on figuring out another thing that didn't work. Okay. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. So in terms of what didn't work, what's one thing that you could do differently now? Like you've got the one thing that didn't work and that's judging yourself. So what's something you could do differently now?
I mean, I do the effective versus ineffective language. Do that.
And how might that work for you?
I mean, so that would take me out of the equation.
And what gets put into it?
So looking kind of from the outside and looking at the results or the process.
And what does that force you to do when you look at the results in the process to you? How effective are you when you look at it that way?
I mean, definitely much more effective looking at it that way, since I'm not like all clenched up and on the defensive.
So have you reduced your stress when you look at it that way?
I would, yeah.
You would. Okay. When you look at it that way, what else is a benefit that you get from? So reduce stress, that all clenched up feeling. What else? Is the stuff that you're looking at then externally verifiable? Or
right.
Your opinion?
Right. I would, at that point, it would be external.
It would be. In fact, if you're doing it properly or effectively, it would have to be externally verifiable. In other words, it's not your opinion anymore. So you can't really go to school beating the crap out of yourself as how dumb, stupid, ineffective, undeserving you are. All that has to stop because you're going after, hey, this part worked. I don't care if it worked, just 2 degrees of effectiveness, 2 units up, like 2 inches of working out of 10 miles of, I got to cover 10 miles. You're now 2 inches closer to that end, which is effective. You moved in the direction you want to go. Whereas beating yourself up is sinking you, digging a hole 10 feet deep every time you pound yourself into that post hole and trying to dig it deeper. So now you're rising up incrementally every single time. Okay. And I want those little teeny weeny incremental moves. How come I want you to go after those? Are those flimsy? Are those pretend? Are those fluffy little things that just blow away? Or are they solid little steps? What's the head nodding? What are they?
Yeah, steps.
They're what kind of steps? Hello?
Solid.
Now, what I need you to do is say that to yourself and to me in a way that it sounds solid. Not just, okay, Blair wants me to say solid. I'll just say it's a solid little step. So say it so that you feel it.
Right. Each incremental positive change is a solid step.
Better. Now make it more real to you. Say it in a way that's even more believable to you. Don't do it for me. Do it for yourself. But do it for me anyways right now, because you need somebody. You're not well practiced enough to do it for yourself yet. Sorry, I'm a real bitch. I'm a real hot seat guy. I demand this because you're worth it. You are. See, hold it. You're laughing. How come you're laughing? It's positive. It's good. Look at that. Look at your behavior. How do you feel right now? Up or down?
Up. Embarrassed, but up.
Embarrassed, but up. Like uncomfortable, a little embarrassed, but up.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Uncomfortable, yes, but up.
Uncomfortable. Yes. Yes. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. That's what I said. Yeah, exactly. Thumbs up, clapping, applause. All right. This is what you need. This is what causes people to stay stuck because they don't get the process of change and how it needs to be locked in. You have to be safe and uncomfortable because all of these habituated patterns of beating yourself up, you've had years of practice. They're not going to give up their territory in your brain easily. They're going to fight you. And the way that they fight you is this is uncomfortable. And most people, if they don't know the difference between safety and comfort, they literally go, oh, this is unsafe. I can't do this. It's better for me to just beat myself up. They don't say this consciously, but subconsciously, this is the talk that's going on in their head. It's more comfortable for me. It's safer for me just to beat myself up. At least I know what's going to happen to me. Right. Which is exactly the same discussion that women who, like I used to work with battered women, and the stats around that are staggeringly scary. Women would need 32 beatings with 3 life-threatening hospitalizations on average before they would leave their partner. 3 times, 3 major hospitalizations, 3 life-threatening hospitalizations, okay, before they would leave. This is how powerful your beliefs can be on holding you stuck because you know, your brain knows what to expect. Mm-hmm. Because we have been trained through our education system, through culture, through everything else to try and fit in. It's a cultural norm. So we train ourselves to try and fit in. But society is changing at an unprecedented rate. These old rules don't work anymore. Yet we have all been trained with these rules. And our school system is still training people and habituating them to the same rules of engagement, the same buzzer rings in our backyard because we got an elementary school. They expect the kids to behave a certain way. They have all of these rules of expectation, which were done because of the Industrial Revolution. They needed people to be compliant and show up for work on time, where the town whistle would blow at 6 a.m. to wake up everybody in the town. And it was the plant whistle so that they could get their workforce started uniformly at the same time every day. Mm. Okay, it can be traced back to the late 1700s, early 1800s. And mindset, it came into development in the 1800s. And it's literally mindset training was there to cause people to figure out how to implant certainty and how good certainty was and how reliable it is so that you can go off and, fill the all the manufacturing plants, all the industrial plants with people on a reliable basis. And if you don't fit in, it's your problem. I'll find somebody else. Just like they say, if your mindset isn't working, that's you, because your mindset wasn't good enough. I'll find somebody else who's got a better mindset. Mm-hmm. Like, that's so much crap. Mindset was great in its day, but we're not living in that world anymore. We've come so far, and there are so many things that are changing so freaking fast. We have to adapt. We have to have mind models so we can adapt to change. What do you think your ability is to apply the knowledge that you've gained here tonight on evaluation versus judgment and slow your judgment of yourself and increase your evaluation? What's the odds on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being, oh, I got it locked in, and 1 being, I can't do it and I'll never be able to do it.
I would say, I have a pretty fair and pretty good understanding of at least that portion.
Good.
So at least a 6 or 7.
Perfect. That's exactly those two numbers I had in my brain. If she's hit 6 or 7 right now, that's huge. And before you came on this call, did you really know what you had in mind of how many, like how to make these shifts on yourself? Because in your chat, you stated that you were stuck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. I'm just looking. Oh, definitely feeling stuck in my own head. Are you definitely feeling stuck? Stuck. Are you stuck? Or did you have a small shift?
I think, yeah, I don't think I'm stuck.
Right. And how long were you stuck in your own head?
Long time. Probably since my divorce. So 10 years.
10 years. And inside of an hour and a half or less, or maybe an hour and 40 minutes, you got unstuck. That's what mind models can do. I'm not suggesting that this is going to be a permanent lifetime fix. It can be, by the way. It's not impossible. It's not improbable. It can be, but it's more or less up to you. But jump on these calls every week, and you can start getting weekly reinforcements of where your mind models are so that you can beat down that old mindset and start recognizing how to change functionally, effectively. Because next week, we're going to take a look at another key human driver. People move towards pleasure and away from pain. I mean, this one I could have thrown in tonight because anyway, I'm not going to give it all away for next week. We got to do this because that is, I can say it in a second or two, but the consequences of that, when we start taking a look at what mind models do and how mind models use that principle, use that law of human nature as a key driver. When we understand what that is, and we know that is a key driver of everybody, and we apply that everybody to us, and we externally verify that, oh my God, that starts empowering ourselves. And it's no longer, oh, Blair empowered me. No. I do not want to do that. Like, fine, I'm a nice guy. I wouldn't mind doing that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an asshole that way, but I am the nicest asshole you'll ever meet, according to my wife. Just saying. But anyway, that's another slide. But the point being here is that when you go into pleasure and versus pain, and you are able to evaluate yourself and you evaluate, hey, this is painful. This is something I don't like. I want to move away from. And you go, so how do I do that? How do I actually do that on an identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable basis? That's stuff we're going to be talking about next week. Okay. And so that who's in control when you can start doing that? Somebody else or you, Marina? Are you in control when you can do that, or is somebody else in control?
Right, you'd be in control.
Yeah, you're in control. You want to be empowered? You want to know how to turn your self-empowerment switch on demand? Be here next week. Okay? Seriously. That's what this is all about. And so with the other people that are still on the call, Lorenz, April, Brent, Sherry, that's what we're going to be doing. We've got great stuff for the call next week. Invite other people, get other people on the call if you can. Bring them along, share the message. Jump on Facebook, like it and share it and comment to your heart's content, please. And do the stuff. I want to get the message out because this stuff works. And you were like, did this work for you, Marina?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how effective was this for you tonight from where you thought you might be or where you got on to where you are now?
I mean, going from like, I've heard about mind models, but like just percentage. So this was definitely very educational and very.
So where are you now? Scale of 1 to 10. How much did you think you'd get to? How much did you get?
I'd still say 6, 7.
Perfect.
I mean, I think I've absorbed a good bit.
You have. So I really go, great work. Okay. Let's just do a wrap up with everybody else. Because we ran a little over for time, getting back to some of our old times of 2.5, sometimes 3 hours. Okay, so Dwayne, your thumbs went up. So what worked for you this evening? What did you pull?
I really enjoyed the ability to watch Marina and now being able to identify through her language pattern what I was seeing and what was happening, that it was a real life example.
Yeah, it's almost like a real life case study.
And it was great. So you get bumped up from an 8 to a 9.2.
Thank you. Cool. Tim and Becky.
Muted, right? Yeah, for me, first of all, I want to thank Marina for coming on. I mean, that was
me too.
Yes.
For putting herself, into action, and getting outside of her comfort zone and coming on and being able to work through, her stuck state. It's huge. And I just want to say, thanks, Marina, for hopping on. That was, awesome. I mean, I can relate so much to what she was talking about because that's exactly where, a lot of what she was talking about was exactly where I was at. The big light bulb moment for me, it's interesting because I've always walked through the what worked, what didn't work, and what might I do differently now. And I'll fully admit, sometimes when I ask myself that question, I automatically, and it's still just that old me still in there a little bit, I automatically can think of 1,000 things that didn't work. But sometimes I really have a hard time picking out that what did work. And when you mentioned that, the one thing that did work is the fact that you're actually asking yourself the question, that was a huge light bulb moment for me because I never thought about it like that. The fact that I'm actually walking through the evaluation process it worked, right? It's working. So
exactly.
That was huge. That was the aha moment for me. So,
and that means you can always guarantee yourself one positive out of this. So you cannot ever again, ever wipe out those positives and say, I never did anything effective.
Right.
And that's the old judgment thing starting to be crushed. And when your brain knows that, it becomes, the judgment becomes weaker and weaker and weaker because you've taken the power out of judgment.
Yep. Awesome.
Now, I'll warn you, it doesn't ever necessarily, I've never met anybody, me included, where it's gone away 100%. But this isn't about creating a perfect life, because there is no such thing. This is about getting yourself effective rapidly, like in seconds. So you can dismiss that. You can dismiss that state of judgment in your mind virtually instantaneously.
Yeah.
But not before it happens, because you've got it in there. It was wired in. It's a habit. You maybe with a lobotomy, you might be able to get rid of it, but other than rather, ridiculously crazy things.
Well, it's many years of ingrained in that, that habit pattern. And within just a matter of months, I've been able to, kind of do a 180 on that. And so, I mean, obviously, those years of habitual is still going to be there in some form.
Yeah, totally.
But the fact that, I've been able to do the changes that I have within just a matter of months is huge.
Yeah.
And what's even cooler about that is he's made even more changes that he's not consciously aware of in the behaviors that he does day to day, because it's outside of him and it's not from a reflective state at that point as well.
Right.
Mine is very similar to his as far as that first question being very effective. When people are stuck, really being able to hone in on that very specific thing, and watching the transformation of I forgot her name, Marina. Sorry. Going through in her own head before she even raised her hand to come on, she was probably having an internal battle with, perceiving that she needs to change, and that nervousness. I remember myself first time that I went on as a panelist, I waited a couple times. So props to you for getting resourceful and taking action on that. Those were the things that really stuck out to me today, as far as watching her go through the perceived change, reaching out, seeking clarity, getting resourceful, and then taking action.
Absolutely. It was a 9 for me, Blair.
Yeah,
awesome. Good job.
9 for me as well.
Thank you. Perfect. John, Connie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This is huge for me. It's I can remember again being kind of in Marina's seat and sitting there, thinking, oh my God, this is being recorded and people are watching, and all of that in addition to the confusion of all this stuff coming at me and trying to make sense out of it. And so I thank her for coming on, Marina. I thank you and congratulate you for, acting on that courage, and it'll only grow from here. You're little do you know, but you've already changed, and there's probably no going back for the benefit. And I invite you to come back on again, because that will magnify the benefit so much. If you get back on this panel again and just keep doing it, it gets better and better. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally for me too. I want to echo everything John said. He's taken the words right out of my mouth, because I wanted to thank you personally for coming on and risking, because there are so many people. Every person on this panel here has been where you are. Every person. Most people, the vast majority of people, are where you are or have been where you are. And so almost everybody can relate to you. And it doesn't matter what walk of life they've been in. If they don't have to be a female Russian immigrant who lives in Mississippi, who came from St. Petersburg. I mean, it might well be true, but the point being is that your background, your emotional background, and your stuck state is so common. And it's such a big one that needs to be broken through, and people don't know how to move beyond it. And our traditional counseling and psychology, psychiatrists, and both traditional and non-traditional models sort of take small parts of it and work on it, but they don't take the whole thing and start breaking it down. And my job at Life Skills Training Center was to work with over 1,000 people at life skills colleges and who came in, were sent to us. I'm up here in Canada by the government of Canada. And the government of Canada had spent $42 million in a 5-year research project to identify 362 life skills. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough because it wasn't really designed for a mental health sector. My mom had a particular desire to work with people with mental health issues. And I wound up being brought up in that whole thing since I was 6. I was going out volunteering with Canadian Mental Health since I was 6 years old. And I saw things. And that whole upbringing, my background and whatnot, started giving me a very interesting, rather unique perspective, because I'm also dyslexic. So I had my own challenges to go through, and I needed to figure stuff out for me. I found that the stuff I figured out for me seemed to work really good for some other people, not everybody, but it also gave me life skills training, and the research gave me a methodology to follow that was identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. And unfortunately, at our peak, well, it was designed in such a way that we could work with people who were suicidal. So at our peak, we had over 1,000 students in our colleges, 23 of them spread across Canada at our peak. And with over 1,000 students, 800 of them, 80% of them were potentially suicidal. And we did not lose a single person in 35 years that the college was up and going. And that's something I'm extraordinarily proud of. Not one person died on our watch or committed suicide on our watch. So anyway, so these things were tested very heavily by me and our team of coaches, and so that these mind models work. Okay, so you just have to use them. You don't even have to believe in them. You just have to use them. Because when you use them and you ask yourself what worked, and you go through that evaluation thing, so long as you can say even that first one is, what worked is I attempted to look at this stuff. I attempted to do it differently. That worked. That's enough to break through that judgment mindset for you to find another thing. And then you had a cascade in total of 9 things that actually worked. Okay? You figured out 9 things that actually worked. I didn't have to push you on all of them. I just had to get you past the first 3 or 4 or 5, and then boom, others just sort of fell out of your mouth because they're there waiting in the background for this belief of judgment, of beating yourself, of negativity, to get parked temporarily so you can find out how effective you are. We're not scared of being bad or wrong. We're terrified because of our habituated models that we have of finding out just how powerful we actually might be. And so that's something that we have to take a look at and discover our own way to self-empower. Make sense to you, Marina? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Trevor, what worked for you tonight?
So I don't go on and on. I'd probably just say if I was going to pick one thing, it would be how I got more evidence of sticking with the process even when it's uncomfortable, and how if you do stick with that process even though it's uncomfortable, whether it's for myself or if it's with someone else and I'm the one trying to help them, it seems to always be rewarding in the end, even though halfway through it feels like you just want it to stop and it's not helping and you're drawing blanks. So that was strong evidence for me, again, that it's always worth it to really stick with the process, and that discomfort is just part of it, and just trusting the process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Marina, last words.
Very helpful. I'll be here next week.
Awesome. That's cool. And Lawrence, I hope I'm pronouncing Lawrence. I hope you'll be here actually April. Hey, April, you're back. Great to see. I just looked up. I saw your name there. Brent, Sherry, hey, come on back. Invite other people on the program. Like, jump on the webinar with us. It's fine. It's great. So anyway, good night to all of you guys. Great work. Marina, great work to all the people here, Dwayne, Tim, Rebecca, Connie, and John, and Trevor. Well done. Good work tonight. And Marina, thank you for taking the risk and jumping on here. Okay, and Lauren said, radical self-correction done well. Totally agree with that. This is amazing for uncovering beliefs. Oh, you haven't even seen the belief system, Lorenz. Like, we're just doing this like little stuff here. This is accidental. The best method without going into an altered state I'd ever seen, even better than NLP. By the way, I am a certified NLP practitioner, and I am not a fan of NLP. It does some stuff really well, but some stuff it sucks at. And that's how come I went out and I developed the mind models in earnest. I thought mind NLP would be what mind models is, but it really didn't hold. This stuff sticks like glue in your mind. So, okay. Anyway, come on back next week and I'll help you cement it in even more. Marina, Lorenz, thank you. And Lorenz, if you want to jump on next week as a panelist, love that. Sherry, you too. Brent, anytime you want to. April, you as well. Okay. You guys all take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye for now. Remember, like, share, and comment, please, on Facebook. Okay. Take care, guys.